What is going on, everyone? It is College Football Talk. I am your host, Hunter DeLauder, and today is Week 8 recap, where we're going to be going over all the biggest action from this past weekend, headlined obviously by Georgia, Texas. We also got to talk about Tennessee, Alabama. Tide go down again. We're going to talk about how Miami won in a shootout, LSU dominant, and Indiana smoking Nebraska, plus much more. We got best bet recap to talk about. Guys, we're red hot. So if you want to make some money, I would consider listening along. We have been we've just been scorching hot last 4 weeks, 4 straight winning weeks. We'll get into that at the end of the episode. But before all that, though, make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast. We're trying to get those numbers up. Getting to 200 subscribers is the next goal. We've got to get there, but the only way to do it is for you guys to hit that subscribe button. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. You do not want to miss anything. Twice a week, all season long. Plus, we're all year round. So you do not want to miss anything. And if you know people that are college football fans and just want to listen to just listen to someone talk about ball, please, by all means, get them to subscribe as well. If you want to hit me up on the socials, at DeLauder Hunter on Twitter, Hunter.DeLauder83 on Instagram. So without further ado, though, we're going to get right into it. Obviously, you can tell in a new area we're going to be recording today, and I'm at the in the INC here in the University of Florida's Weimer Hall. So a new location, but same podcast. That's what we do. Environments change, show stays the same, which is what we always strive to do. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And that means moving the banner to number 5, Georgia, dominance in dominating fashion, defeats Texas, number 1 Texas on the road, 30-15. It was all dogs from the jump. And we talked about it last episode. Some of the keys Georgia had to do was get a lead, put pressure on Texas. Texas has not played from behind yet. Get a lead on them. Well, they have, but they haven't been played from behind in like meaningful moments. And I thought Georgia did a great job, albeit with the turnovers they had with Carson Beck, but the defense put pressure on them. The offense took advantage and scored. And just before you know it, they jumped out to a big lead. It was 23-0 going into halftime. And Texas was shell-shocked. They had no answers at all. They couldn't move the ball at all. Didn't matter which quarterback was in. No answers. They couldn't run the ball well. They were having trouble stopping the run. Texas defense played fairly good for the whole night, considering the circumstances that their offense put them in. But just like Texas playing catch-up all night. And that's exactly what Georgia had to do. I wanted to see if they would. They were able to limit explosive plays. Texas came in with 45 plays of 20 yards or more. They only had 4 plays on the night. That's how good Georgia was at keeping everything in front of them. Their biggest play of the night was 34 yards. Everything was in front. It was really awesome to see Georgia step up in that category. We had not seen a defensive performance by them to that standard at all this season. So to see them do that, really impressive stuff. The Junkyard Dogs were back in full fashion. 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. I believe it was 7 or 8 QB hurries. They were in the backfield all night. They were putting pressure on that offensive line, which was considered to be one of the best offensive lines in the country. They have guys on that line that will be first, second, third rounders. They have a bunch of guys. That's an experienced group. That's a group that's been together for over 3 years now. All came up together in the high school ranks. And headlined by Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams, their 2 tackles. Those 2 got worked all night by guys like Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker had 8 tackles, 8 solo tackles, by also 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, fumble recovery. Michael Williams had 2 sacks. Damon Wilson was in the backfield. Christian Miller, Tyron Ingram, Dawkins, Warren Brinson, they were all crashing through. They couldn't run the ball and they couldn't protect and pass pro. And so that resulted in Georgia just living in the backfield all night. Texas couldn't do anything offensively. Dalen Everett had a hell of a night. This is just really from the first half alone, mostly outside the 7 tackles in total, but 1 interception, 1 sack that resulted in a fumble. He recovered his own fumble after it was a mad scramble for it. So, and he played great in coverage all night. Julian Humphreys played great in coverage all night. That secondary, which I had my really big doubts on. just the way they've been giving up big plays and just seemed out of sorts, confusion, not communicating very well, getting lost with eye candy. And they showed up huge on Saturday. And it was really awesome to see them do that finally. They held Texas in the first half to 38 total yards of offense. That was on just 2 yards rushing, 36 yards passing, and they created 3 turnovers. And I mean, Texas was shell shocked. Like I said, for the game, Texas 19 first downs only, 2 of 15 on third down. They were 1 of 5 on fourth down, 259 yards of total offense. They ran the ball, the biggest dire. They ran the ball for 29 total yards. They averaged 1.1 yards a carry. They averaged 0.1 yards in the first half. 29 on the night. Yes, that factors in sacks, but still, they couldn't do anything. And so Trevor Etienne, who we were waiting to kind of see his game, that they brought him over from Florida. He was going to be the guy. He got in some off the field issues in the spring, but gets suspended for the week 1. Comes back week 2. You can see what his capability is, but you've just been waiting to see him kind of break a big one off. And in the biggest game of the year, to this point, outside the Bama game, I mean, one of your biggest stars shows up huge. 19 carries, 87 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He was Georgia's offense. Carson Beck just struggled all night, or he struggled for the most part outside the one big drive at the end of the game. But Etienne, 3 receptions. He also had 100. Georgia alone had only 110 total yards of offense rushing the football, but it's still enough. Etienne averaged 4.6 yards a carry. He was dominant. He used his shiftiness and quickness to kind of gain those extra yards, and it really helped out. But talking about Carson Beck, or my last point here before we get to Carson Beck, I still think they can feed Trevor Etienne more. They haven't been feeding him a whole lot. They had the 19 carries, but I just thought they keep getting away from the run game too often, where your guy's running the ball really well. Feed him the ball still. Like, they have obviously shown they can't stop the run. Why would you go away from it? Continue to feed him until they can stop him. I hope that they pick up on that sooner rather than later, and they just realize, okay, this guy could have ran for 25, 30 carries. Now, 30 maybe stretch it, but he could have easily ran for 22 to 25 carries, somewhere in that range, because nobody else was even near him. I think Nate Frazier was the next guy. He had like 4 carries. So it was Etienne's backfield, but they still didn't run the ball enough. So I want to see Georgia run the football more, establish that line of scrimmage. They did a great job. The numbers won't blow you off the screen, but if you watch the game, you would understand, like, Etienne dominated on that game. And it's going to be really fun to see if he can build off that. You got Florida coming up, so maybe a little nice little revenge game almost, in a sense. But moving now to Carson Beck, he struggles again in the big game. Even the Bama game, outside the second half, the first half, terrible first half in that game. Struggled a little bit at the start of the Mississippi State game, but he still threw for career numbers, so I'm not worried about that. I'm worried that he's putting too much pressure on himself. These unrealistic expectations that he's maybe putting on himself entering the season. You hear all this noise from the outside in the media about how, he's a first-round draft pick, possible number 1 overall pick. And, he has maybe putting too much pressure on himself because there's throws he's making. He threw another interception last night where I just don't know where you're trying to force that into like triple coverage. He did it in the Bama game. He did it in the Mississippi State game. Mississippi State game, he threw it in the red zone, like trying to force one, I think, to Delp in the end zone. And I don't know where he was throwing it. And he did it on Saturday. Which is like, where are you throwing that, dude? So I just think he needs to stop trying to force the throws. If they're not there, don't throw it there. And he has one of the best arm talents you'll see in the country. No doubt in my mind on that. I think he's letting that maybe get ahead of him in that point where he's trying to say, okay, I can force that throw because I know I can, and it's not working. So maybe he just needs to dial it back. I thought he did a better job as the game went on, settling back in. I think it's just these starts, these games that have these high stakes implications. He's just struggling to get kind of his feet wet and just settle in from the jump. And it's taking him another, maybe 2.5, 3 quarters to kind of settle in. And so I would like to see him maybe not do that as often. Drops are killing him, and this offense is just getting killed by drops. I mean, they had 8 on the night, I believe, was the final number. It could have been more. Like the first drive of the game, drop. There was a big drop London Humphreys had in the red zone. Got to get those. You cannot. I think it was Lawson Lucky had one near the end zone. Dominic Lovett had a few drops. Like you can't have these drops. They're especially with a quarterback that's trying to get his feet wet and settle in the game. You got to be able to help him out. Catch the football. You're out there for a reason to catch the football. If you can't do that, then get off the field. And that leads me to my final point, though. We're still waiting for a full game from this Georgia offense. They put 30 up on Texas. They could have been up 30-0 on Texas easily in the first half. I'll give you an example here. They started out one of their drives at the Texas 28. They settled for a field goal. I believe there was a drop thrown in, mixed into that drive. But like that itself, I mean, outside of like two scoring drives, all their other scoring drives were inside Texas territory. And we're settling for, there was 3 field goals on the night. Got to be better. We got to be more efficient. I think Kirby Smart even said that, like going into halftime, like we're settling for field goals. Too many field goals. Got to get in the end zone. And we're waiting to see now when this Georgia offense is going to put it all together. It's scary to think too, though, that Georgia just beat the brakes off of Texas in the grand scheme of things, and they still haven't put together a full game yet. So we just keep crossing our fingers now that, hey, any moment now they could put it all together and look out. I mean, you saw what the defense is capable of after hearing all the noise. Now we're waiting for the offense now to kind of catch up here. As for Texas, though, dominated in the trenches. That was the biggest takeaway. This was not a quarterback issue by any stretch. Talked about the tackles struggling mightily. Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams got smoked on the outside. I mean, they were getting pushed around like rag dolls, and these are supposed to be top-end talents. I mean, I saw a mock draft today that had Banks going 3rd overall. Not after Saturday, he would. That's the best on best right there. And you got smoked all night long. So, defensive line played pretty solid. They did have 1 sack, but outside of that, they got pushed around a little bit in the run game. I mean, pass rush was okay, but they only got home once. I thought Georgia's offensive line played outstanding, especially still not having Ratledge. You got Jared Wilson back. Who knows if he was even 100%. So I thought they really stepped up huge all game long, helping out in the run game, because that was a big thing Georgia needed to do to win this game, was to run the ball effectively, and they did. So really loved seeing that. But now we'll see if Texas can bounce back here. They have Vanderbilt coming up. They have to go to Vandy. So remember the last time a top 5 team played Georgia and then had to go on the road to Vanderbilt. It was Alabama, and they lost. So I would definitely make sure Texas has their head on a swivel and going to take on the 25th ranked Vanderbilt Commodores. Shout out Vanderbilt. Give them their flowers here later on and around the country. And one final point about this game. The officiating. I want to talk about the officiating here. It was I'm going to try to be as nice as possible here. It was one of the worst officiating games I've ever seen in my life. No matter what division, NFL, college, high school, Pee-wee, I don't care. You see bad calls all week. All week long, every week in college football. But when you have these officiating crews that aren't full-time employees and they get tasked with calling and officiating the biggest game of the week, and you get that kind of performance, there needs to be something done. I mean, I can go through it. There was missed calls they didn't call in Georgia. There was a clear hold they missed. I believe it was on, can't remember if it was on Ernest Green or maybe Fairchild. It might have been Xavier Trust, actually, where I want to say it. There was a defensive back blitz when Georgia was backed up on the drive they ended up scoring on. And I mean, he got held down. He got like choke slam. They didn't call it on Georgia, which would have been big. But like, even, I mean, but the penalties that Georgia got called for in this game were atrocious. Not all of them, but most of them. There was a missed hold by Christian Miller that would have resulted in a safety for Texas. There was the Trevor Etienne touchdown that he scored in the second quarter. No, in the third quarter, excuse me. Or the fourth quarter, excuse me. On second down, he scores. They go to review. They say that his knee was down. The ball in his upper torso was in the end zone. His knee was never down. Somehow, somewhere on God's green earth, they saw something that wasn't there. That was one. Trevor Etienne again, later in the game, with just about 2 minutes to go in the game. Georgia gets a first down here. Game's over. I believe it was on second down. No, it was third down. It was like 3rd down and 8. I think it was a pass play maybe, but might have been a little toss, or it was a run. Etienne gets to the outside. He gets pushed out, but he dives. Ball is over the first down line. Before he goes out of bounds, his body is in air still, so it's still legal. Ball is over the line. Somehow, some way, it is not called a first down. Georgia ends up going for it on 4th down. They don't get it. Luckily, their defense was playing so good that it didn't matter, and Texas ended up turning the ball back over. That was 2. Those were just the reviews. And then, actually, staying on reviews, and then there's 2 targeting calls. There's one on Dan Jackson, where I forget who the offensive guy was for Texas that was involved with it. Puts his head down, and it looks like he's going to spear him in the chest. He's going to spear Dan Jackson in the chest. Dan Jackson lowers himself down, puts his helmet down kind of like this, lowers himself, hits him in the shoulder. He gets called for targeting. It's him. He's gone. Well, what do you want him to do? Get speared in the chest? He has to protect himself too. This isn't just a defensive penalty. If the offensive person initiates it and he's just really trying to do anything protect himself, why isn't the offensive person getting charged with the penalty? That I couldn't wrap my head around it. And then later in the game, in the 4th quarter, Jonel Aguero, he gets tossed, and I lost my mind over this. You cannot, and I mean you cannot, get any more of a form tackle than what Jonel Aguero put on this Texas offensive player. Drops his knees, squares up, wraps up, side, tackles him, hits him hard, he falls to the ground. It's a big play. They call it targeting. Like, where is the targeting? It's not targeting. It's a picture-perfect tackle. They called it targeting. I don't know. Don't know where in the world they're getting targeting from in that case. But now, you lose those 2 guys for the first half of the Florida game. So hopefully they brought in Chris Cole and Ja'Cory Thomas in relief. And actually, I believe it was Cole almost had an interception. And Ja'Cory Thomas actually made a play too. But, I mean, you're losing 2 of your top guys on the back end for bull crap calls. It's like, we got to get better in the officiating department. And then, we didn't even talk about the main one, the main event. Here, I have my phone to the statement. They, the PI call. Oh, we'll give me 1 second here. I'm going to find the sorry excuse for an official that was given by the SEC. All right, here we go. So let's set the stage here again. It's Texas just scores. Georgia's struggling. It's 23-8, late third. Beck throws a pick, gets returned to like the Texas 9 or like the Georgia 9. It'd be a first down and goal. Place is going bananas. And all of a sudden you see a flag. Flag comes out. They call defensive pass interference. Was there defensive pass interference? No, not really. I think it was more offensive pass interference. If anything, they kind of both put their hands on him. Arian Smith kind of moved him a little bit, trying to make the play and back through it to one side. Arian Smith was on the other side. So they called defensive pass interference. And then out of nowhere, the Texas student section just thinks it's crybaby time and starts just chucking stuff on the field. They just start throwing shit on the field. It's part of my language. Bottles, beer cans, all you can think about. It was just, as soon as you knew one came out, then it was 10. Then it was 20, 40, 60, 100, 150, however many, just came pouring down in the end zone. And then all of a sudden, play stops. Sarkisian has to now go over to the sidelines or over on the other side where they're all at to tell them to stop. They start getting everything cleaned up. Meanwhile, the officials are just getting together casually, and then they just decide to overturn it. What? You can't just overturn a call because I made a mistake. Sorry, you made the call. It's not reviewable. So you got to live up to it. You can't let a bunch of 18 and 20-year-olds bully you into changing your mind. You are a college official. Make the call. Stick by the call. It's unacceptable. Here in the statement, the audacity to give out this kind of statement from the SEC officials. This is the official statement. With 3:12 to play in the third quarter of the Georgia at Texas game, Texas intercepted a pass at the Georgia 46-yard line and returned it to the Georgia 9-yard line. Texas was flagged for committing defensive pass interference on the play, which resulted in Georgia maintaining the ball with a first down. This would have put them at the, I'm going to say, at the past, it would have been about the Texas 40. This would have been it. So they would have had the ball in Texas territory if it stays. The game officials gathered to discuss the play while Texas was having a crybaby and bullying the officials here. This is when they were throwing stuff on the field. The game officials gathered to discuss the play, which is permitted to ensure that the proper penalty is enforced. At which time the calling official reported that he erred. And a foul should have not been called for defensive pass interference. Consequently, Texas was awarded the ball at the Georgia 9-yard line. With the original evaluation and assessment of the penalty was not properly executed, it is unacceptable for debris to be thrown on the field at any time. The disruption of the game to debris being thrown on the field will be reviewed by the conference officials, blah, 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 blah. They were ended up fined for $250,000. Texas doing an investigation trying to see which students were thrown on the field. That's all great and dandy. He made an error because they started showing it on the screen. What the hell is that excuse? You can't overturn a call because you're getting bullied by a bunch of kids and they start throwing it on the screen. Stick to the call. Live with the call. Everybody makes mistakes. That's what makes everyone human. That's fine. Stick with the call. Don't get bullied into saying, I'm going to just screw this team now. I mean, and Texas ended up scoring a touchdown. What if there's a world in another universe where Texas wins this game? They come all the way back and win this game, and that's partly why. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that? If Georgia lost the game, and we wouldn't be all on that call, but it's certainly a big factor into it, that would have been a huge mess on the hands of the SEC, officials everywhere. And I just hope that there's some sort of suspension, lack of big games now this group gets awarded, because that was terrible. That was terrible. It was one of the worst officiating games I've seen all year. And trust me, I've seen bad officials this year. I've watched mostly all the Miami games. There's been some bad plays. So, all right. Enough with the official rant. We got to move on here because we got plenty to talk about. But Georgia dominant. They move up to number 2 in the rankings. I believe Texas got to double check. They dropped to 5, I want to say. All right. All right, number 11 Tennessee beats number 7 Alabama 24-17. This was the third Saturday of October. It was the uh, third time in a row, 3 straight weeks Tennessee's been shut out in the first half. They trailed 7-0. This is really a big part of the game right here. Bama forced 3 turnovers in the first half. They didn't score any points off of it. They actually threw a terrible interception. It was one of 2 bad picks that Milroe threw, and one of them was in the end zone. Just terrible. It was a really bad read. He was trying to force one to Ryan Williams, and it had no chance. So Bama couldn't score. Tennessee couldn't score. And realistically, Josh Heupel had a nice game plan in that first half. They should have scored points, and they didn't. But we'll stick here with Tennessee for a second. Nico Amaliaba, quarterback, he's once again just really inaccurate with a lot of these throws. Execution-wise, it's just not there right now. He did make some great throws late in that game, including a Chris Brazzell touchdown with 5:52 to go in the game. It was like a 16 or 17-yarder. He had a nice deep shot too. I think the Brazzell in that second half kind of got things going for him got him going a little bit. But, for the most part, he only threw for 194 yards. He was 14-27. He threw an interception. It was a really bad interception. He tried to force one on first down in the red zone. Got picked off, I believe, by Malachi Moore. I can double check, though. He had the one touchdown. It just, between the poor execution by him, the lack of accuracy, and the slow starts Tennessee's putting themselves into, thank God their defense is relevant and really good, because this is a team that, if they didn't have a competent defense, they would be getting blown out probably in a lot of games. They would certainly not be a top 10 team. They would certainly not be in any contention for the SEC at this point. Their defense is carrying this boat for at least one of the halves, each half, or the first half of these games. Even the run game wasn't getting going. First half in total, they had 0 points, 143 total yards. They only had 44 rushing yards, and they were 1 of 5 on third down. Dylan Sampson was held in check, but then he came alive all of a sudden in the second half. He carried Tennessee again, kind of how Trevor Etienne did with Georgia. Sampson, again, put on a show. He had 26 carries, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. He now has 17 touchdowns on the year. It's still tied with Ashton Jeanty for, I believe, second now. It was a tale of 2 halves. Once again, Tennessee, 24 points, second half. 265 total yards. They were 5 for 9 on third down, and they rushed for 170 yards alone in the second half. So, and it was weird because they had rushed. Oh, I'm thinking of the Alabama scheme. So I'll get to that in a second. But again, Brew McCoy was big. He stepped up big time as that leading guy. He had 80 yards on 6 catches, and it was Chris Brazzell's touchdown we talked about. But I don't know what to think still, because I'm really worried that this is not just a flash in the pan ordeal. This is something now that's happened 3 straight weeks in a row. They're getting shut out. Imaliava, it just looks like he's stuck in the mud. He's not improving any. He's making good throws when it counts for the most part, but still, you're being carried at this point by Dylan Sampson. So what happens? Let's fast forward now to this Georgia game that comes up November 16th. Tennessee has to go to Sanford Stadium in Athens. They historically struggle there anyway. Let's just say, Georgia's obviously shown they're not going to let you run the ball very effectively. Ask Texas, ask Auburn, even ask Alabama. Alabama didn't really run the ball effectively enough outside of Milroe. And that was really on off-script plays, using his legs. Let's say Dylan Sampson's shut down. He's stuck in the mud. He's only rushing for 18 carries for, 85 yards. And they just can't get anything going. They're shut out in the first half again, let's just say. Or let's say they scored 10 points. Is Amaliava good enough to win a game like that? I don't think he is right now. I don't have the confidence I thought I had in him early on in the year when he was just lighting it up. I'll be against poor competition, but I just don't see him winning a game like that. And I feel like we should have had a better idea, or at least more confidence in him at this point. We're just not. So hoping he is able to, kind of figure it out here and just settle back in a little bit and get his situation. Otherwise, it's just looking like a Joe Milton type season again. I mean, Joe Milton, it's kind of like the same script we're seeing right now. Unreal athleticism, athletic, talent, arm strength's there. He can move. He has all of it. But the accuracy is struggling. He's struggling to hit any sort of deep shots. Even the intermediate stuff's not there right now for him. So hopefully, we're crossing the fingers still that we can see some sort of improvement by Maliaba. But I mean, so we're talking. I mean, this is a Bama secondary that struggles mightily at stopping the pass, and they're an undisciplined group. I mean, even last week against the Florida secondary, it's improved, but it's still nothing special. Even the Arkansas secondary, there's room to pick there too. Ask LSU last night or Saturday. So these aren't like top tier secondaries, and they're still having trouble moving the football through the air, at least through one quarter, or at least through the first half. So a lot of these big time offenses we're seeing now struggling to put together a complete game against quality opponents. Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, even LSU a little bit, Ole Miss, Texas, Oregon, even Ohio State. I mean, like all of these teams are not. Texas was the last team that we saw that, there wasn't any really flaws, and it was probably because they just weren't playing the level of competition needed to kind of expose them a little bit. And now you have a little bit. So, I mean, Texas, so the book on Texas now is if you can match bum rush those, create pre-snap confusion for yours, and just suffocate that that backfield and just wreak havoc on it, he's going to struggle. He's a pocket passer. He's not going to use his legs aren't a threat. And if you can get him trying to throw on the run, it's probably even better because he's not that accurate anyway, throwing the football on the run. He's a pocket passer, needs to plant his feet and throw the ball. And if you let him have time to do that, he'll eat you alive. You've got to get home on him. And that's what Georgia did. So the book's out there. So all these teams have these flaws. And right now, Tennessee is just, they can't put together a full, complete game on offense. Shifting to Alabama now. Again, we talked about in the preview. Just wanted to see if they run the ball a little more. Not Jalen Miller run. I want to see Jam Miller and Justice Haynes run the football. Again, they couldn't run the ball. And it was getting away from the run, too, which was crazy. They had 75 total yards of rushing offense. 75 total yards. Jam Miller had 12 carries. He led the group, at least in yards per carry. He had 42 yards on 12 carries. Justice Haynes had 8 carries for 22 yards. They started the second half. So the first half, they ran 45 plays. Like 45. I mean, obviously, if you're doing that, you can kind of get a sense maybe you're wearing down that Tennessee defense. You kind of get after him here. You get a little more physical. This is when you start running the football. And they came out in the second half, ran the ball 8 straight times. Ran it right down their throat. But then after that, they rushed the ball 7 times for the rest of the game. Like, what happened? Did we just decide to throw that script out the window? I don't know what went wrong there. Like, did DeBoer and the staff just be like, we've shown now we can do it. All right, back to now. Throw it all in Jalen Milroe. Jalen, go make the big play. We gotta have it. We just don't want to run the football, so we're gonna just tell you, hey, go make the big play. And again, they were too dependent on him. Jalen Milroe, 25 of 45. They made him throw the ball 45 times. He had 239 yards passing. He only had the 1 touchdown, and he had 2 terrible picks. It was a really bad game for Jalen Milroe. He couldn't even run the ball. He had 14 carries. He led the group, the running group, in that category, but he only had 11 yards rushing. He averaged 0.8 yards per carry. Tennessee had no business letting him do anything he wanted to. They shut it down just like that. But again, they're putting everything on him to be Superman and to just say, hey, we're not going to help you by running the football. We got 2 hosses in the backfield that are plenty good enough to take over games and run the ball effectively. We're just not going to do it. We're going to tell you to do it. You go do it. You win us the game. And that's what they're trying to make him do right now. I mean, even in the receiving room, outside of Ryan Williams, where is there? Jeremy Bernard? Kendrick Law? Kendrick Law's punching guys right now. That's costing them yardage and penalties. Talk about that in a second. I mean, Ryan Williams had 18 targets on the night. He had 8 catches on 18 targets for 73 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it was the Ryan Williams show. It was good that because they got last game, they didn't really feed him the ball a whole lot. So obviously there was a point of emphasis to get him the football, and they did. But again, like this offense is so dependent on 2 guys pretty much. It's Williams and Milroe. It's just not sustainable, and we're seeing it now. You saw it against the second half against Georgia. You saw it outside of that. If they don't hit that play against Georgia, they're already a 3-loss team before heading to Baton Rouge. I mean, that's just the truth right there. I mean, maybe they find a way to move down the field, eat enough clock, kick a field goal to win the game. Okay. But if they don't hit that big play, like if Julian Humphreys doesn't look like a buffoon out there in coverage, just throwing his hands up, I mean, this is a 3-loss team possibly. That has to go play a LSU team in Baton Rouge that looks transformed over the last few weeks, especially on the defensive side. I mean, LSU is going to beat that team for sure. I'll lay the points down now if I could, for sure. If Bama's final 4 drives, 2 3-and-outs, turnover on downs, it was about 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7. And then Kendrick Law decides to punch a Tennessee player for some reason. Don't ask me why. I couldn't tell you. Punches him, 15-yard penalty, and 4th and 23, I believe, was the down, and they decided to throw like a little flat receiver out in the flat for like a 5-yard pickup. Like that's the call we call. I don't know. Don't ask me. I'm not a Bama fan, and so I'm not going crazy like Legend is on Feinbaum. Probably should just turn on Feinbaum and watch the replay from today's episode, because it's probably just all Bama fans at this point, and it's probably great entertainment. I mean, Feinbaum's got to live for these moments. Just when like Alabama is struggling, even if they're winning, like the struggle. Oh, those calls just got to be just electric as always. I mean, it's Bama's offense is too dependent. Their defense is so undisciplined. Even offensively, they're undisciplined. 15 penalties. They were 115 yards. The last 2 times they've been to Neyland Stadium, 32 penalties for 245 yards. I mean, that was under Saban. They have been one of the most undisciplined groups as far as penalties go. And it's at least for the last 3 or 4 years now. I don't know where it came from, but these Alabama teams are so undisciplined. Like they lack any sort of discipline at all. It's a poorly coached team. It's a group of really good and talented players that are not disciplined, and they continue to shoot themselves in the foot. They're hurting themselves big time. The 4th down call when Jalen Milroe rushed, tried to get the QB sneak, and you have 2 receivers out there throwing fadeaways. What are they doing? Bring in a heavier package and get the receivers off the field if you're going to do that. That was their role. Because I bet you Jalen Milroe would have appreciated maybe a fullback in there instead of just, we have guys doing step back threes like James Harden. So, but Bama goes 0-2 now in the state of Tennessee. So probably not the best start to the jump. And I think it's the first time since 2007 now that they have 2 losses before November. It's certainly not the start Kalen DeBoer imagined being here. And now, I was watching the Joel Klatt show earlier today. He had a great point. If Bama loses to Baton Rouge in a couple weeks to LSU, and that's sitting if Eli Drinkowitz and company, who had an ugly, ugly win against Auburn on Saturday, if Alabama loses to Missouri, I'm going to tell you right now, DeBoer might get shot by a fan. Just saying. It's no threat. It's no Nostradamus type ordeal. They may not let him leave the stadium. They might airlift him and send him to like Pyeongchang or something like that. That's coming from like Bama fans. But I don't. If they lose any other game now the rest of the season, this is not a playoff team. There's two, and at least right now, chaos is sure to happen at some point probably. But a 3-loss team where your best win is Georgia, but you don't have another win outside of that. I mean, now Georgia at least like they could afford to lose another game, but you still now have the Clemson win, which is looking better and better each week. And now you go on the road to beat Texas. Texas has a cupcake schedule the rest of the way, except for A&M. So, plenty now. Pressure now puts on Bama. Bama cannot really afford to lose a game now going forward. They're already outside. They're already not going to make the SEC title game, which is crazy to think that they're just fall to like the middle of the pack, and it's not even November. So, all right, moving on. I'm gonna get a drink here. Oh, excuse me. All right. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. We're at 109 subscribers. Haven't had a subscriber in a couple weeks, so make sure you guys are subscribing. If you're new, hit the subscribe button. If you're a reoccurring guest and you're not subscribed, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button as well. And share the podcast to everyone that you know to get those numbers up. LSU rolls Arkansas 34-10. It was just a dominant type win. I thought it was going to be one of those like maybe kind of gotcha type games where LSU's coming off the massive win with Ole Miss. Arkansas's coming off a bye week after beating Tennessee. And then you get the game in Arkansas at night for the Golden Boot. And LSU just kind of controlled the game from the jump. They were just a better team. They had 395 total yards of offense. They were able to run the ball really good. They had too many false starts in the game. I think they had like 10, more than 10 at least. But they were able to run the ball really well. They ran for 160 yards. Caden Durham has really found a nice role as that running back now with John Emery, who went down early in the year. He's found a nice role as that leading guy. He had 21 carries, 101 yards. He had 3 touchdowns on the night. And they were able to control the clock doing that. In limited possessions for that Arkansas offense it can be explosive at times, Bobby Petrino and company and Taylor Green, Jaquinda Jackson, but like keeping them off the field, they can't do anything. And so 38 minutes of time of possession. They were 9-15 on third down, so they were keeping drives going, and they were just eating clock. Nussmeier, solid game, didn't have a touchdown. He threw for over 230 yards. CJ Daniels led the group in receivings for LSU, but Whit Weeks, another outstanding game. Last 2 weeks now, he has 27 tackles and 2 sacks. It's just, he's been a man on a mission. This defense almost looks better. It looks like it's moving better. It's just more in sync. And I'm not saying it's because Harold Perkins isn't in it, because he certainly would have probably helped still. But I don't know. They look like they've been revived in a sense. And it's been a great like token towards, Baker, Brett Baker, and that defensive coordinator and that defensive staff. They've done such a great job at kind of building LSU back to what they should be defensively, and that is being one of the better defensive teams in the country. This is a team that is top 5 in sacks, top 5 in pressure rate, and getting after you, and a lot of times they're getting home and making things just uncomfortable all night. But outside of LSU dominance, though, it was really a tale of that plus Arkansas miscues. Missed field goal and a fumble in the first half, and then they had an interception and a fumble in the second half, and they only ran the ball for 38 total yards. Jaquinda Jackson was held to 26 yards on 5 carries, so they got away from the run really fast because they fell behind, and the miscues killed them. So it was just a bad night for Arkansas. You kind of either expected them to either show up to that night and just shock LSU in a sense, or that was kind of how I felt, and I took Arkansas in a 3-leg parlay. 2 of the 3 legs hit. Unfortunately, Arkansas was the last leg it didn't hit. But that was really our only loss on the weekend. So really good weekend outside of that. But that's the key right there. If you can kind of just stop you can stop Arkansas's best playmakers from doing anything, then you're gonna have a great night. Miami, number 6 Miami holds off to beat Louisville in a shootout. what a game to start off the day. It was a noon kick in Louisville. Louisville had upset on their minds, and it was just back and forth all game long. Neither defense could stop each other. Both quarterbacks played outstanding. Cam Ward had another 4-touchdown game. He didn't have a pick in this game. Neither did Tyler Shuck. Cam Ward, 21 of 32, 319 yards. He had the 4 touchdowns. One of the throws he made to Xavier Restrepo in the back of the end zone was a chef's kiss. It was an absolute dart on the run, too, which made it even better. So they were in the corner of the end zone. It was an awesome throw. I tweeted about it. And Tyler Shuck played just as well. He threw the ball 51 times, so that obviously can't be happening on a regular basis. In a game like this, maybe just because your defense struggled so much. Threw for over 342 yards. He threw 4 touchdowns himself. But it was Miami running the football that was really key too. I think I mentioned this in the preview, how they haven't been really running the football a whole lot, or at least effective. And they ran the ball for 200 yards in the game. Damian Martinez, Mark Flesher, both ran the ball really well. Both ran for over 70 yards. Martinez had a really nice touchdown at the end of the game. He was just carrying guys into the end zone. Testor had a great call in that play. He had a great game just in general. Just another Joe Testor type game where there's loads of action, and when you get Testor on that call, it just writes itself. The script writes itself right there. Miami receivers came up massive in this game as well. We talked about Xavier Restrepo in the touchdown. He had 100 yards receiving. He is quietly becoming one of the greatest Miami receivers of all time. He's up there with Santana Moss and Michael Irvin. I believe, who else went there? Reggie Wayne was there. Andre Johnson was there, I believe, too. But you can kind of see, statistically too, he's quietly just moving on up. Samuel Brown had a really nice game too. He had 125 yards on just 3 catches. He averaged at 41 yards per reception. That'll get you there, I guess. But it was Louisville's mistakes that were more costly. Added in a overturned fumble recovery touchdown that would have tied the game. Louisville stripped Cam Ward. They returned it for a touchdown. It got overturned. I thought it was the right call. It's very close. His arm was just going forward enough before the ball came out that they overturned it. Miami ended up scoring the Martinez touchdown. But Louisville's they fumbled the ball in the end zone. Miami recovered it for a touchdown. That was really the biggest mistake. Even though Miami fumbled later in the game that led to a Louisville touchdown, that just at that moment, it felt like a moment where you were going to look back in that game after it was all said and done and be like, we just couldn't have had that happen in that moment right there. And they did, and that ended up being probably the more bigger mistake out of the two. But still a really nice game by both teams. Miami stays undefeated, and they just kind of are who they are right now. It's just a defense that's hasn't played very well the last few weeks. But, as well, and Cam Ward just continues to shine each and every week, and it's really fun to see. It's great entertainment if you're a fan of offense, and we'll see what they have next. Louisville, really like what I saw, but just ran into just the better team won, unfortunately. And speaking of better teams, number 16 Indiana smokes Nebraska 56-7. The Fighting Kurt Signettis, the Sigs, are out in full fashion. The Hoosiers from Bloomington, Indiana, moved 7-0 on the year. I believe they moved up to 13 in the AP poll. This was a game I thought Indiana was going to win. I thought maybe Nebraska would be able to keep it close. But Indiana just came out like a freaking fire truck or a freaking freight train and just shot out of the gate. And that was that. 7-7 in the red zone, all touchdowns. Curtis Schwartz played really well before he got hurt. Something to keep in mind, too. He left the game at the end of the first half with a hand injury. He's going to be out for a few weeks. So it means it's Taven Jackson's team. Taven Jackson came in, 7 of 8, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Indiana ran the ball for 215 yards. This was going against the number 7 ranked rushing defense in Nebraska. And Justice Ellison had himself a day, 9 carries, 105 yards. He averaged 11 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. And this is a Nebraska defense that was ranked in the top 10 in rushing defense. They also had not allowed a rushing touchdown on the day, and they allowed 2. So it was really they allowed just 2 to Ellison. So it was really great to see Indiana just punch Nebraska right in the mouth, and then Nebraska never got back up. It was a knockout punch of what it was. And Dylan Raiola did not play good enough by any stretch to get Nebraska into the game and to keep Nebraska, trying to think of the better word here. Nebraska, give him a chance in this game. It was all Indiana from the start. It was close for about a quarter and a half, and then all of a sudden Indiana just pulled away and just never looked back. Nebraska has to go to Ohio State now this week. So it's big time spot here. Similar to how they were last year. 5 wins. I believe they were 5-2 or 5-3 at this point. They didn't get to bowl eligibility. Is this a team that's good enough now to kind of put that in the rear view and get now over that elusive, that 5th win barrier where they're stuck there? Can they overcome that and get to that 6th win? We'll see. We're going to see that. It's gut check time. I don't know if they're going to get it against Ohio State, but they still have plenty left to play for. Indiana has College Game Day coming to town. They have Washington coming, rolling in. And we'll see now if the Hoosiers can stay unbeaten with Rourke out. Rourke will come back at some point this season, but it's going to be Jackson's team now. So we'll see if how efficient that offense is going to be going forward now without one of their best player. Indiana still is one of 2 teams now yet to trail in a game, them and Army. Shout out Army. The Black Knights came big a game. Talk about them in a little bit. But hey, I'm just saying, fighting Sigs here. Top 10 in scoring offense, top 10 in passing. They'll light you up. Sig is not. He said, Google me. I'm a winner. Man's got moxie, and I love it. It's crazy to see how well Indiana has just transformed themselves. They were left for dead. Just left for dead. Tom Allen moves on to Penn State to be the DC. They bring Signetti in from JMU. He brings in 27 transfers, 13 from JMU. And then he brings Rourke in from the MAC. And they just have shot out like a cannon and not looked back. And it's really cool to see. And this isn't against bad opponents. These are Power 4 teams that they're doing this against. So we'll see if they can keep it up now and keep on rolling. Speaking of us rolling, we're going to move now to around the country, where we're going to get in our plane as we do every week. And we're going to fly around. And this time we're going to be recapping all the biggest games that weren't headline games. There's still massive games out there that we're going to talk about. I'm just going to bang them out. Quick little thought on each of them and then move on. All right. Oregon rolls Purdue on Friday night, 35-0. BYU rallied late to beat Oklahoma State. We finally got an Ollie Gordon game. He had 3 touchdowns, 107 yards rushing, had an awesome hurdling touchdown on pass. And it didn't matter because BYU game-winning touchdown with 10 seconds left in the game to stay unbeaten. It's BYU Cougar magic, Mormon magic, they may say. And Jake Retzoff had another great game. Another great game for quarterback from BYU. And BYU now moves, I forget who they play this upcoming week, but undefeated and still hanging around, kind of where that Indiana is right now. Just hanging around, undefeated, at the top of the Big 12 standings. Plenty still left to play for. Duke, also on Friday night, beats FSU for the first time in school history. The Noles dropped to 1-6. Brock Glenn threw for 110 yards, 2 interceptions. I don't know what to tell you. This stuff, again, it's the same story in a different day with that receiving room for Florida State. They can't catch the ball. They dropped a touchdown pass. That was beautifully thrown. And they lost by 7. There you go. But hey, Duke, 6-1 right now. Just saying, 6-1 Duke right now. Manny Diaz, Malik Murphy have done a job there, and it's really cool to see some of these teams that were kind of just left for naught after, in Duke's case, Mike Elko leaves, Riley Leonard's gone. And they just kind of pick up where they left off. And so it's really nice to see that. Kansas State rolls West Virginia. Avery Johnson had a really nice game. This Mountaineer team, just I don't know what it is at this point. Last week's game was almost like their last ditch effort, and they kind of just it's just been ugly for them. West Virginia's leading rusher was Garrett Green, and he only had 89 yards. So I don't know what to tell you there. Mountaineers are struggling. Neil Brown might be back on the hot seat, and it might be turned back up. So Iowa State comes back. Talk about comeback wins for some of these Big 12 teams. Iowa State comes back to beat UCF 38-35. Rocco Beck scores with 30 seconds left to win the game. UCF ran the ball for UCF had 416 total yards of offense. They only had 62 passing yards. They ran for 354 yards on the ground. They averaged 10 yards a carry pretty much. I mean, crazy. Clemson wins again. They struggled a little bit out of the gate with UVA, but rebounded later on in the game. 48-31 they won. Cade Klubnik continues to play good football. 308 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just Clemson just kind of moving along here. And it makes that Georgia win a whole lot better. Notre Dame kind of keeps moving along as well. Beats Georgia Tech in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, albeit without Haynes King, who was out for Georgia Tech. But still, Irish get it done 31-13. Texas A&M pulls ahead late to beat a scrappy Mississippi State team 34-24 on Dak Prescott and Dan Mullen day. Hate to see it. Auburn blows the game late to lose to Missouri. We had Auburn to cover if you picked them up earlier in the week. If you didn't and you took them on Saturday, you didn't cover, unfortunately. But nonetheless, Missouri stays around in that SEC race here. But they get Bama. Now they got to go to Tuscaloosa. Can they put the final dagger into Alabama season? We'll see. Illinois beats Michigan in a slop fest. Just gross. Actually thought Altmaier would be the better quarterback in this game, and actually it was Michigan. And that passing offense that had a better day. So, but nonetheless, Michigan still can't do anything offensively, and they lost 21-7. Michigan has 3 losses on the year, and Army and Navy both stay undefeated. The Black Knights and the Midshipmen just keep on moving along. Army beats ECU 45-28, and then Navy takes care of Charlotte. Navy has to play Notre Dame this week at MetLife Stadium. The doomsday, the awesome arms forces scenario. Step 1 takes place on Saturday. Just saying, if we as a college football community want Notre Dame or Navy and Army to be colliding in the AAC title, maybe possibly, and then turn around and play each other again. Starts on Saturday, so we'll see. All right, Wisconsin beats Northwestern 23-3. Wisconsin has found their footing here a little bit since the Alabama debacle. They've now moved to 5-2, and they have Penn State coming to town Saturday. Could Wisconsin be better be putting Penn State on upset alert here? Penn State has this game, and then they get Ohio State at home the week after. They best not be looking ahead, because Wisconsin, that's a sneaky spot right there heading up to Camp Randall. I think the game's a Saturday night as well, so watch out for the Badgers. South Carolina rolls Oklahoma. I was curious to see which defense would show up. Oklahoma's defense played pretty well, but their offense either set them up terribly or just turn the ball and let South Carolina's defense score for South Carolina's offense. Oklahoma started the game with 3 straight turnovers. One of them was a scoop and score by Tonka Hemingway, and then there was a pick 6. And that was kind of a ball game. Hawkins got pulled. Jackson Arnold went back in. It didn't matter. OU's offensive line continues to struggle. They gave up 9 sacks. They had 13 tackles for loss, and couldn't do anything. I mean, South Carolina's offense was okay, but again, the game was already out of reach 5 minutes into the game. USC loses to Maryland. They moved to 1-4 in conference play. They've lost somehow 29-28. All 4 of their losses now in conference play have been by 1 score. Just can't finish the game. They're getting their offensive line is so outclassed weight-wise and just physicality-wise, that they're just running out of energy, and they're just getting pushed around at the end of the game, and then it's showing. They just can't finish games. Colorado rolls Arizona 34-7. It was one of our best bets on the week. They smoked Arizona. It was never even competitive. Travis Hunter only played for the first half, and Shedeur Sanders didn't even have to go like crazy Superman mode. I mean, this defense, Colorado's defense, is top 20 in tackles for loss in the country. I mean, this turnaround has been really awesome to see from Colorado because they were pathetic defensively last year. And so to see them just improve like that, really nice to see. I still want to see if they can ever run the ball a little more, but I think that is who they are. They're just going to be a pass-first type offense. Vanderbilt beats Ball State 24-14. They didn't cover the line. Could have been a look ahead to Texas, even though they're a 17.5-point dog entering that game. But the most important thing out of all of this is that, A, they eclipsed their win total for the year. Well, they already did that. But they're ranked in the AP poll for the first time since 2013. The Commodores of Vanderbilt in football are ranked number 25. They are in the AP poll. How long that lives is depending on if they beat Texas or not. So UF blows out Kentucky 48-20. I thought the Gators were going to win this game. Had them again as one of our best bets. And DJ Lagway, he only threw the ball 7 times. He only had 7 completions for 259 yards, though. He did throw 1 interception. Didn't have a touchdown, surprisingly, at least through the air. He had 8, but he averaged 18.5 yards per throw. So it was all deep shots mostly. And Elijah Badger had 3 catches for 148 yards. I mean, he was one of the reasons why. I mean, he was just heading down the field, and Lagway was meeting him down there. And the defense, I don't know what it has been since the bye week, but they are playing a lot better football. They're creating pressure. They're getting turnovers. And they're stopping the run for the most part. I mean, Kentucky still ran the ball fairly well, but like they're playing a lot better Gator football on defensively. Secondary is still a little bit of an issue, but they're that first and second level, that linebacker and lineman play is just played a lot better. And see if it continues here. But defense had 3 turnovers. Kwani McLean had a pick 6. He's the walk-on who was originally the Miami. I believe he was either in Miami. Yeah, I can't remember. I think he was a Florida commit. Then he went to Miami, and then he flipped from Miami, then went to Colorado, and then he transferred back to Florida. And I don't know. But nonetheless, he had a pick 6. And Gators moved to 4-3. They head to the bye before they have Georgia and Jacksonville. So we'll see how they get ready for that one. And UNLV beats Oregon State in Corvallis 33-25. Sets up a massive showdown in the Group of 5 race as the UNLV Rebels host the Boise State Broncos Friday night. And it's going to be a big-time game, especially in that race here, to see who can kind of get that qualifier for the Group of 5. It's definitely one to keep an eye on if you're a fan of the playoff and just college football. And finally tonight, best bet recap. Folks, we were 6-0 on the week. 6-0. We are 15-1 in our last 3 weeks and 23-10 on the season. I've tried to tell you guys, if you want to make some money, hop on the board. Hop on the train. We're just chugging away now. I mean, we have left the station. We've hit another station. Expecting to stop or slow down? No, we just keep on going through. We don't even stop. And hopefully we can keep it up. We're going to stay humble because we know eventually at any moment this thing could crash and burn. So right now we're on cloud 9 and we're just going to enjoy it while it lasts. So, but again, if you want to hop along here and make some money at this point, why not? 4 straight winning weeks, 15-1 in the last 3 weeks. Just saying. I mean, last 2 of the last 3 weeks we were undefeated. So, I mean, again, choice is yours. Choice is yours. I'm just handing out picks. I'm just handing out money, I guess, at this point. But listen, that's going to be it, guys, for today's episode. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. Again, we're trying to get those numbers up to from 109, trying to get up to 200 subscribers. So if you know anyone, I keep saying it, keep trying to stress it, because I know there are people out there that are either watching the episodes that aren't subscribed, or they know people that are big college football fans. I know that maybe they're looking for a podcast to watch or listen to. Maybe they just want to hear a take or so. Here's the takes. Just hit that subscribe button though, and like the channel or like the videos, and that's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. So, but we'll be back around Thursday-ish for Week 9 preview, and enjoy this recap episode, and make sure you guys are watching, liking, subscribing on YouTube, listening, and following on Spotify. This is College Football Talk. I am your host, Hunter DeLauder, signing out. We'll see you Thursday. Have a good one.